Hey everybody, Kenny here. Welcome to my lore archive series for Path of Exile. This is a series that is intended for allowing players to listen through all of the lore and character dialogue throughout the game so that they don't actually have to stop at every piece of lore or at every NPC and actually stop playing the game just to learn the story, which is absolutely the worst part of Path of Exile. Not the story, but the fact that you have to stop to get the story. So, as someone who has always felt that the lore in Path of Exile is greatly underappreciated, I just felt inspired to get these out there for anyone who's interested. And if anyone is currently in the process of checking out my Affliction playthrough series and is wondering why these lore videos suddenly popped up in the middle of those uploads, the reason is that I actually ran out of hard drive space. So I needed to get these lore videos out so I could get all of the source video files off of my hard drive so that I could make space to record the next act in my playthrough. So that's the reason for that. In today's episode, we'll be checking out the lore from Act 3.
Maramoa. I've heard that the Karui have this philosophy, Makanui, the way of the warrior. I don't think you could get any more Makanui than her. She took it upon herself to look after me before Tolman arrived. Saved my skin more than once. I'm fine with that. Beats being on her bad side. Hagen likes to think he was my kind old uncle back in Theopolis. Granted, the work he gave me saved my parents and I from starvation. This was after my father lost the family fortune at the card table, and we had to give up the manor in the country for a flea box in Theopolis. But he's not half as generous as he makes out. When Hagen gives you something, you can be damned sure that he's getting his pound of flesh in return. No one should have to go through what Grigor has. I help him as much as he'll let me, but he's a proud one, and so he should be. He's survived what has destroyed too many of us. Halfway across the world, and yet the tie between Vanilla and I endures. That was Piety's real name back in Theopolis, before her rise to greatness. Vanilla sold her thaumaturgy in the day, her body at night. Sought after, she was. Enough so to become one of my best buyers. But money never meant much to Vanilla. No, she was striving for something better, nobler. Used to tell me that life needn't be this hard. It's time you all realized that. I bet she fed Tolman the same bloody line. The blackguards talked about Piety's precious gems being infected with nightmare. Tolman, what did she do to you? Vanilla was arrested for consorting with the unholy and condemned to the pyre. This was before the banishments. Dominus shared a last supper with her, heard her confession. Most think Vanilla earned Dominus's patronage on her back. I don't. Vanilla gave Dominus her better life and got a new name in return. You can count on one thing. Piety's grand future won't include the likes of you, me, or Tolman. On the fall of the Empire, the historians are deathly silent. After the Purity Rebellion, the Kingdom of Kaon blockaded Oriath, preventing any trade or correspondence with the mainland. It's said that Kaon planned to invade. Only when the Karui retreated did Oriath get any news from Rayclast. But by that time, there wasn't really anyone left to tell the tale. I know. So strange that stone and metal should move and live as you and I. Still, I read that Chitis's sculptors used to soften their materials with thaumatic sulfite, a byproduct of gem refining. It's the only connection that I can fathom between the cataclysm and the living sculptures of San. Chitis thought that the gemling was the pinnacle of human progress. These glorious gems have brought us within spitting distance of godhood, he once said. The High Templar at the time, Vol of Febris, thought they were a perversion. He wanted the Empire made pure, cleansed of the stain of thaumaturgy. You look at San and tell me which one you think was right. And while you're out there, look out for monkeys. No, not those bloody monkeys from Frisia. These ones are painted on the walls. I think you'll find them enlightening. What is it? You find a high enough spot and you can see the Lunaris Temple over the river, at the western edge of the city. Since the blackguards arrived, the clouds above that temple have been stained with the blackest of smoke. You can see it sometimes when the westerly blows. It stinks worse than death. Be careful.
A stranger walks into a town with a lost lover in tow. Sounds like the beginning of a jest, which I bloody wish it were. Problem is, we're still one doe-eyed lover short, which ain't much good to anyone. They tend to come in pairs, you see. Since you seem to be in the good deeds business, how about throwing a tollman into the bargain?
The slums are east of here. Used to house the unwashed of the Empire a couple centuries back. Now it's home to the walking ulcers and sores of this poor city. I was Clarissa's guardian angel back in Oriath. Put food on the table in return for a bit of light work. I try to keep her out of trouble as best I can here, but San's full of secrets, and Clarissa's full of curiosity. She's just so ample, is our Marimore. In my mind, you'll find no saucier specimen of womanhood. It's the tattoos and that fancy talk she does. Intoxicating. She's a cool one, though. I can't imagine what that poor bastard's been through. It's a miracle Gregor hasn't completely lost his mind. Granted, he's lost one or two pieces along the way, but there's still plenty that's worth listening to. Gravesius is the mailed and bloodied right hand of Dominus, and I thought the Templar were meant to be spiritual men of deepest humanity. You notice the sarcasm in my tone, right? Had to smuggle a fellow out of Theopolis once. Got a bit too friendly with Gravesius's wife, he did. Every blackguard was out on the streets looking for him, so I had to think lateral-like. We took to the drains and didn't put our heads above the pavement until we sniffed the sea. A grubby bloody job it was, but worth it for the coin he paid. You want a piece of Gravesius? Sometimes the only way up is down. I'm no history scholar, but I know that Emperor Chitus was overthrown by Vol of Thebris in the so-called Purity Rebellion. But Vol had the shortest reign of any internal emperor. The Cataclysm sort of that.
Marimor Patua thanks you for returning our Clarissa to us. She is the gentle heart of this place, a spirit still capable of love in this wasteland of hatred. Yet that gentle heart remains in jeopardy. Tolman isn't deserving of Clarissa, but she'll not smile until he's by her side. You have the walk, the grace of a woman who knows death intimately. Men are born with that knowledge. We have to earn it. So, from one woman to another, I ask for your help, Ranger. Please, find Tolman for us. Dominus and his Ebony Legion arrived some time ago. Now the blackguards scour San like hungry maggots on a carcass. What are they looking for? Only that which is best left unfound. Greetings. Clarissa will weep for Tolman. She must. The cloud is darkest before the rain. Hagen is a man of many claims, and those claims seldom dance harmoniously together. A lie is a death sentence in Namakanui, so I was raised a daughter of truth. Hagen is a son of self-interest. He's no warrior, nor spirit singer. He's a Korangi. I don't know the right word in Oriathan, but in Karui it means he who wins wars with false promises. Grigor straddles two worlds. One foot planted on this soil, one in the dirt of spirit and shadow. When you speak with him, be sure to know from which world his words arise. It's an often told story among the Karui, how Vol of Thebris bent his knee to my ancestor, King Kalm, and promised freedom in return for war. While Vol raised his purity rebellion in the heart of the Empire, Kalm took Lord Lion Eye's head and the southern coast all the way to Siren's Cove. It was the greatest conquest the Karui have ever seen. If I knew how to cross the river safely, I'd be wearing Gravicia's head on my belt.
Nice, eh?
What is it? Traversing the sewers under the river. I should have thought of that myself. Yet, the more of a picture you paint of that undying concoction in the sewers, the less I want to see it. If you manage to destroy it, expect a storm of undeath to descend upon you. The dark is their home, and there'd be nowhere more homely to the Undying than a pitch-swathed drain under a river. Goodbye. Citizens of the Sand that was, the Undying have been around for hundreds of years. Left to their own devices, they'll likely survive for hundreds more. Still, they're not immune to mortality's touch. They can be killed, with some difficulty. There's still prey out there. An overreaching witch floundering out of her depth. Happy hunting, Makoru.
Keep your distance, Exile. The name's Grigor, and when you've had your eyes fill of my twisted visage, how about you turn those fine jellies of yours eastward? Yes, you've brought Clarissa home to us, and once again I see she pesters me with pity. There's only so much broth, so many bouquets that a man can take. For a criminal, Clarissa has a strangely soft center. Still, I'd rather not see that heart of hers harden. See if you can find that lost boy mate of hers. With him around, Clarissa doesn't have as much time to bother me. Death came to town. The roaring Ezomites wore red. The red of blood, the red of the fray. Death came to town. The crying Ezomites wore black. The black of disease. Black of dismay. Death came to town. The silent Ezomites wore grey. The grey of twilight. The grey of decay. Only the Isles of Scoth were spared. Once a backwater of my proud civilization, now all that remains of the Ezomites. Maramoa's sure of herself, and that kind of surety gets you killed in Sarn. You and all those around you. Hagen's got the right idea. Don't believe in anything that you can't trade or eat. I wouldn't rely on Hagen in a fight, and I wouldn't put too much faith in what he says. But he has one highly useful asset. His obsession with self-preservation. If Hagen deems you of use in keeping his fat self alive, he'll do almost anything for you. I tried to penetrate the Solaris temple in the northeast. Almost got myself killed by the bloody ribbons that guard the place. Bizarre, floating tapestries they are. Creatures of cloth and thaumaturgy. Fortunately, a few legionnaires got in the way. While the ribbons eviscerated them, I ran straight into Gravicius. He dragged me over the bridge to the Lunaris temple in the west and put me in Piety's tender care. Didn't say a single word to me the whole time. There was nothing but a spoil of war to him. Piety's a genius, sculpting mere human clay into divine gemlings. At least, that's what she told me when she opened me up and buried a virtue gem in my entrails. Malachi did the same in the name of the Emperor centuries ago. Chittis's gemlings still rule San. We call them the Undying now. Now you must leave. The Eternals revered sun and moon as the two eyes of their god. The right eye judging Solaris, the left eye merciful Lunaris. I can't imagine that god being overly merciful when she finds out what Piety's been doing in her temple. Now, when Piety was experimenting on me, my consciousness was mercifully fleeting. In those moments of numbing darkness, I met a presence. Intelligence, power, immensity beyond the limits of my pitiable mortal senses. To this creature, I was but a raindrop falling into the sea. I heard Piety speak to her lackeys of the beast. It is the source of her thaumaturgy and the object of her ambitions. I believe Piety's beast and that dark entity are one and the same. Wherever it is, whatever it is, the beast is the cause of my malformation. It would not be a stretch of reason to consider the beast the source of all malformation in Rayclast.
Mortality is the mother of life. We have turned our backs on her. The Monkey King has built his throne on your back. A throne of gold and gem, polished with blood and tear. Throw off the Monkey King and his shiny privy before your back is broken. There is nothing eternal in this empire of ours, but the names of our day that shall be revered or reviled in the centuries to come. The shadow whispers and simpers at the Monkey King's feet. When the Monkey King puts his back to the sun, it is the shadow that leads the way. The Monkey King names you slave. No, you are the gems of Rayclast, not the treacherous stones you dig and die for. It is time to bend the Monkey King's ear. Tell him your true name. I write this now in hope that someone will remain. Someone may remember. The sun is an orb of blood. Twisted twilight shrouds my eyes. The air reeks of anguish. San has plunged into nightmare. The man who served me coffee now writhes on the floor. He rants of visions he alone can see as writhing red tentacles grow from his face, as if his eyes had been seeds waiting to sprout. He is quiet now, my waiting. No more cackling and screaming. Dead. Of my fellow patrons, only 2 live. The others have fallen. Their blood is everywhere. The survivors, gemlings both, their skin shrivels and grays to the hue of necrosis. Their gems flare with unholy luster, their eyes black as hatred. A gemling ghoul, it twisted off a corpse's head, gnaws at skull-like dog. My head now, visions clawing at me. Thinking burns. I see horror. Envy the mute corpses at my feet. Words flay me. Flee me. Old is madness.
Perhaps nature simply has a way of growing and changing beyond anyone's control. It is
Pretty as
still
porcelain,
possible that the
but her
Magi
mouth
recovered
spins
in
like the
numbers and
potter's
strength and
wheel.
reclaimed the forest.
That's how I once
But if
described
they
Diala.
don't, such is the
Yet
cycle
on
of
this
life
day,
and death.
my lady is as ravishing as a nightmare, radiant as the fullest moon. Diala is my gemling queen, and we shall rule side by side over the world that will soon come to be. Tear down the walls that imprison the mind. That is what the gems do. That is their true virtue. The moment my fingertips brushed the cool, silken plains of that first gem, I felt it. My skull ached as if its contents were growing, pressing against the bone, searching for a way to break free. That night, once the wine had dulled the pain enough to allow the onset of sleep, the dreams began. I have not been without them since, nor would I be. Every spark of thaumaturgy that I wield, every device that I forge, every creature that I transfigure, I owe to these lessons cloaked in nightmare. From whence do these precepts hail? Certainly not the mundane grey between my ears. I possess only one reference that bears faith. Translated with unquestionable clarity by that idiot savant, Isius Perandus, the beast. Doriani, vow, bring the truth. Soon now, so shall I. Malachi. I awoke, feverish and barely conscious. I set to drawing these maps through the sable hours. By morning, my fingers ached, my eyes burned, yet still I found no rest. The reverie commanded its rendering. The reverie device now stands completed. I've placed the first of my maps within its receptacle. I've taken my maiden voyage into nightmare. I know now that which sent me this precious gift. It knows me, expects my return. It would be foolish to disappoint. Malachi. My dear Chitters, the Empire has lived in fear and ignorance since its inception. Our Asmiri ancestors, in their arrogance, turned their backs on the lessons of the vow. The emperors before you lacked courage, lacked vision, paying lip service to eternity while scrabbling for approval and comfort within the prison of their meager mortal lives. You are not one of those emperors. You are Chitus the Great, the man who will make this empire truly understand the meaning of the word in time. We shall build this thaumatocracy.
I'll miss a boy. He was always up for a laugh, whether it was at his expense or not. But I wouldn't miss that Clarissa more. Argan's the name, by the way, and it's my honour to welcome you to dirty old Sarn, the metropolis of opportunity. The opportunity to make something of yourself, or the opportunity to have a very messy death.
Tolman's dead then. Another victim of Piety's cruelty. Perhaps he escaped lightly. Look upon Grigor to see what life entails under Piety's influence. Let me offer you something. In recognition of all that you have done for us, we shall mourn Tolman's death as we shall treasure Clarissa's life.
I no longer dream when I sleep. I have a nightmare. The same nightmare over and over. The mirror. It's never my reflection looking back. The first time that mirror appeared to me, it was Cole I saw. A rapist from Oriath I had the displeasure of sharing a pen with in Gravisius' stockade. Piety took him for her experiments, and that night saw her handiwork while I slept. This time, it was Tolman. Flesh dried to leather, organs shrunk to husks, blood trickling through his skeleton like red dust in an hourglass. It's piety's gift to me, that mirror. At least I won't be seeing Clarissa the next time I look into it. Make sure it's not you I see either.
Poor Tolman. I made this bracelet for him when he first arrived here. Idiot said he'd never take it off. I called him a liar. He didn't, though. Not once. I need to give you something. I asked a lot of you out there in the slums. More than I should have. You tried. And that's all we exiles can ever hope to do. Those keys unlock the gates to the sewers. Tolman found them. Figure that in the worst of times, people will hide their wealth in the worst of places. We were never game to test his theory. Not with the Undying down there. But you're strong. Stronger than any of us here. I don't think you need to fear the dark. Sorry, I need some more time to think. We'll talk soon, I promise.
Victaria was a poet what ended up leading a rebellion, right under the nose of Emperor Chittis. But here's what really interests me. Our wordsmith was quite the talented larcenist as well. Pulled off the heist of the century, in the name of the people, of course. 3 finely crafted platinum busts, commissioned by Chittis for his favourite trio of generals. Victario and his coppers hold up in the sewers. Now that you have Clarissa's keys, perhaps you'd be inclined to search out those heroic busts for me. I'm sure I can make it well worth your while.
The Beatles poet could hide the spoils from Chittis, but not from us, eh? I knew you was the exile for the job. I'm sure you've been more than compensated already from Victario's stockpiles, but here's a little extra. Care of something I found under a dead man's bed. Why? Just because I like you.
I walked halfway across this forsaken continent because of an ode. Of jewels and eternity, it's called. For twinkled promises of jewels and eternity, the Gemling Queen gave her heart and body to the King of Shades for one more day in the sun. The last day in the sun. That's but a portion of the full epic. The Gemling Queen lived, and she's the enigma behind the fall of the Ezomites and the Eternals both. Look to the Solaris Temple to the northeast. Find the Gemling Queen's remains before piety does, and destroy them.
You are not a cockroach. Strange. Inundated with cockroaches I am. Black ones, 4 limbs, nasty, spiky things. Are you spiky? If so, my ribbons will pluck your spines. Malachi liked spines. Liked my spine. Pretty spine. Bejeweled and bountiful. Enough to make an empire weep. Do you weep, not a cockroach? I do. Tears are infinite. Why, on this very day I found a new reason to cry. What is that you have? Not a cockroach? My ribbons spool. Those black ones wanted them, my ribbons. Wanted to wrap the city in black ribbons. Now they are my ribbons forevermore. Forevermore. I hate forever. I could tear happy ever after from Bard's bleeding tongues. You're still here, not a cockroach. Oh, gratitude. Yes, I should give you a token. Token? What token? This? Is this to your liking? The cockroaches will come again. They want the twist. That cockroach emperor. The other bugs shout his name. Revisius. Cross the river, squash the Emperor cockroach in his nest. The bridge, it is barricaded. That spawns a tricky question. Questions. I asked too many questions. Chit has told me so. I asked where it all went, our feculence. He made them show me. Under the river, the sewers from this side to that. Filthy, fetid tunnels like a rower's cloaca. A black place, crawling with the undying. Once beautiful and arrogant gemlings, now the foul waste of the Empire. Fitting, isn't it? Apt. I like you, not a cockroach. I like that you listen. It would annoy me if the Undying murdered you. Formetic sulfite, that's what you need. You have some already. You are a resourceful humbug now, aren't you? Give it to me. I was all eyes and ears when Malachi worked. I will make something of your formetic sulfite. I will forge an infernal talc that will bring the most furious of light to the undying darkness. A dash of arcanity, a pinch of insanity, a whisper of profanity, and the infernal talc is now ready. It's the most explosive of powders. A sprinkle, the gentlest of dustings of infernal talc will provoke gems to a molten rage. For the undying, the very sun will rise within their flesh. They will burn for their sins, not a cockroach. They will burn. I loved Malachi. He gave me gems, divine jewels for his gemling queen, for his dead queen. But I didn't want me dead. Malachi begged. For him, for the Empire. I chose me. Selfish me. The Empire died, and I live. I live, and live, and live, and live. I was the Emperor's favorite for a time, but Chittus had many favorites. He filled the scepter of God with favorites. Every now and then, he cleared away the clutter. Those who pleased him, they were given to his lords and generals. Those who did not were given to his thaumaturgists. I talked too much, asked too many difficult questions. I was gifted to Malachi, my dear, troubled Malachi.
The Gemling Queen? She's impossible. How did she survive? Why is she not one of the Undying? No, these questions can wait. There's a more pressing one. Is she safe from the Ebony Legion? You've been busy. With the spool back where it belongs, the ribbons should be able to keep the Ebony Legion at bay. We've both seen what they can do to a man. Whether you were saving your own skin or thinking of others, it matters little to me. You succeeded where I did not. You have stood in the presence of the Gemling Queen. I can only hope to meet her in my nightmares.
General Gravisius demands absolute obedience from his blackguards, meaning he's surrounded himself with cowards and lackwits, unable to lift a finger without orders. If you are able, traverse the river and murder Gravisius in his own barracks. You'll be ripping the very mind from the skulls of our enemies. You are the true spirit of the Makoru, the shark. Not the cowardly beast that sinks its teeth into the lonely swimmer. You strike the Waikoama, the canoe, spilling a feast of men into the water. Hunters turned hunted, that you dine on at your pleasure. Have this, Makoru.
You've done for Gravisius. If only I could get word to that lad I smuggled away from the general's wife at the time. The good widow would need a sympathetic shoulder to cry on.
Yes. Gravisius dined with us once. This was before my father's gambling debts caught up with him. I dined with him again in Theopolis prison the night before my exile. He wasn't so polite that time. Thank you. That's one memory I can now put to rest.
There's a familiar face. Before you say anything, yes, I did try to kill you. Inexcusable. I allowed pragmatism to overcome honor in a moment of desperation. Please accept my deepest apologies. What do you say? Can the two of us make a fresh start? Marvelous! Now, as you've clearly noticed, the Allflame has given me another respite from oblivion. Alas, it's a partial success only. I am neither man nor spirit, living nor dead. A state that comes with some rather frustrating restrictions. I know we've only just been reacquainted, but to put no finer point on it, I need your help. Interested, are we? Oh, splendid! In return, I have a gift or two that I may bestow upon you with a click of my translucent fingers. All you need do is furnish me with a crystal decanter and a juicy piece of fruit. Two humble items that remain agonizingly out of reach for a man in my peculiar situation. Will you look at that? The decanter spiritus. As exquisite today as when I found it all those years ago. You may fault the man, but you can't fault his craftsmanship. I'm sure you've heard of Malachi by now. Ever the heterodox, he sought otherworldly inspiration by imbibing a substance called ghost wine. For the purpose, he created the decanter spiritus. I found it on my last visit here. Liquid placed in this crystal decanter becomes quasi-apparitional in nature. I'm sure you can glean the decanter's usefulness to me. Conventional liquids simply don't hit the spot. I am one sorely parched revenant. I hid the decanter spiritus in the marketplace so as not to cause temptation for the less morally steadfast in my crew. Look to the carven heraldry there and find a lion dancing upon the waves. Emperor Chittus was stabbed in the posterior by his own Lord Mayor on the eve of the Purity Rebellion. Chittus's grieving gemlings buried him in the Imperial Gardens, and a plum tree was planted upon his resting place, so that his mourners might taste of his glory for years to come. I found that tree, and one of my men tasted its fruit. I've never seen so much agony crammed into such a brief moment. This may seem a peculiar request, but please bring me one of Chittus's plums. This current form comes with rather frustrating restrictions. It's a small improvement on my last incarnation, but I'm a man who used to poke his sticky beak into the furthest corners of the world. Now I can barely cross the road. It was no mean feat getting here from Siren's Cove, I can tell you. So here's the truth of it. I intend to sup upon mine own death. Oh, fear not. The Allflame will resurrect me, and with luck, will restore my full freedom. But for that to happen, I must die. And in such a manner as to excite the Allflame to utmost ferocity. I am convinced that only the fruit of Chittus can provide a demise of sufficient tragedy. Life is full of painful choices, is it not? I visited Sarn some 30-odd years ago. Those ghasts, the Undying, you call them, scurried up from the sewers near the river and slaughtered all but a few of my most stalwart lads. Oh, they're a foul parody of humanity, those Undying. Nothing in common with a fine, upstanding revenant like myself. Look at the sheen on that plum. Is it not the most delectable fruit that you've ever seen? No? Perhaps the gloss of hope is for my eyes only. Wondrous! Nothing bonds two souls more soundly than murder. For that reason alone, I knew you could be relied upon. Now, for a little amateur vintnering. A quick squeeze of the plum, like so, into the decanter. Oh my! Look how it transmutes the juice so swiftly from material to spectrum. Effortless. And what an aroma. Imminent death never smelled so sweet. I believe I shall call this fine concoction the Imperial Nightcap. Now, before I get too carried away, there's the small matter of your recompense. A toast to swift endings and promising new beginnings. Oh, and you might want to avert your gaze once I have quaffed this style of brew. I doubt that my return to solidarity will be a pretty one. Right. As I used to say in the love dens of Trathis, bottoms up, girls! Oh, my. Now that's an unusual sensation. Oh, dear. Something is amiss. The Allflame. It's... No! No, no, no! It's gone out! What am I... You cannot be. I will not... Please, do not be alarmed. I am neither monster nor murderer, though that is the duality of existence that defines San these days. My name is Yosafuama, and I have the bleak honor of being the sole scholar to the Imperious Intellection, this grand repository of knowledge you see about you. May reason preserve us. More mundane circumstances, it would be preposterous to ask this of you, an utter stranger, but given that I don't know in which century I might see another pair of flesh and bone hands, there's a door, you see, concealed behind the shelves. It leads into the archives. That's where Isius Perandus concealed his golden pages. Can you see how maddening that would be for me? No, of course you can't. Ridiculous of me to... Suffice to say that they are beyond my reach. 4 Varlish texts they are, of priceless historical insight. Please, find my friend's golden pages and bring them to me. You will be rewarded. I vow it before the ancestors. It is the Karui way to observe nature in nature. The fish without the sea is no longer a fish. It is dinner. The Eternals did not see it that way. An Eternal catches the fish, guts the fish, preserves the fish, and places it in a box. Only then does the Eternal feel he truly understands the fish. It was a Karwi Motiata that discarded my failing body of flesh in favor of canvas and oil. An ancient song and a momentary lapse in judgment that I've had more than enough time to regret. Fortune favored. By the ancestors, it's good to see fresh words in front of me. Now, my translation skills are not what Isius were. I can achieve a meager paraphrase at best. But a little knowledge is better than none, is it not? Let us begin. This tapestry of truth is a threadbare cloth indeed, but at least you have allowed me to begin the first few stitches in its restoration, and to settle the memory of a dear friend. In return, allow me to give you this, a little practical wisdom to improve your lot. My word. Valish contextualized syntax is a slippery eel indeed. Let me see if I can grab it by the gills. They carried their virtue gems to Doriani's bed. No, that's not quite right. Ah, yes. Doriani's cradle. The historian finishes that it was a price they needed to pay to ensure a Valish future. A cradle of virtue gems? What sort of Valish future did Doriani hope to ensure? Splendid. Let's see what this page has to offer us. It talks of Queen Atsiri. Now, here's a portentous line. She drenches her altars with the blood of those deranged enough to question her vision. The next piece is a real eye-crosser, but I believe it refers to a communion. Something to do with the harvest moon? Again, Doriani seems at the heart of it. Good. This line I can read without issue. This will be our final night of fear, our final night of suffering. Sacrifice, communion, the harvest moon. An unsettling combination. Oh my. This first line is frighteningly clear. Our queen is dead. Doriani is dead. So many have fallen, so many have changed. The latter text is almost indecipherable. It practically hums with agitation. Let me see. I can make out the words sleep, nightmare, and the beast. Whatever that may be, our historian finishes with, "We have succeeded where our forebears did not. We have failed ourselves." I need not imagine the fall of the Val. I saw the nightmare with my own eyes. Strange. I was put in charge of dating the most antiquated of texts. This parchment, it's a remarkable copy, but it's no original. Much younger. Oh my. Listen to this. My dearest Isius, I have been enlightened beyond expectation. Your work in translating these artifacts is worthy of the highest recompense, and thus I am delighted to offer you a position in my personal laboratory. Please do not give your escorts any consternation. I would be most pained to see such a precious asset damaged in any way. I very much look forward to working with you. Isius Perandus, your friend and admirer, Malachi. Poor Isius. Wherever you went, my pity goes with you. I suppose every civilization has its Doriani, its Malachi. Men of divine talent and demented ambition. Without them, history would be a far less interesting place. How Malachi survived the Purity Rebellion, I don't know. He was at Emperor Vol's side before Chich's corpse was even cold. I suppose Vol found him as difficult to refuse as Isius did. Malachi would never have risen so far without the patronage of an emperor like Chichis. It would appear that Doriani and Queen Atsiri shared a similar relationship. It was said of the beautiful Atsiri that she wished to see her likeness reflected in the still waters of history. Chichis was no less self-impressed. Of all the sins, vanity is the most hideous. San fell in the course of an hour, no more. A tempest raged down from the mountains and engulfed the city, throwing it into midday darkness. I saw madness in my colleagues' eyes, watched as the most rational men in the Empire jabbered and slavered and slaughtered each other. I witnessed Trinian, our gemling intellectus prime, engulfed by the radiance of his flaming cranial gem, and wither like a grape in the sun into a thing of desiccation and famishment. I've seen mountains spew fire in Ngamakanui. I've seen waves as tall as trees and winds that leveled warriors and walls alike. Nature is what nature is. There was nothing natural about the cataclysm.
On the night of 1,000 ribbons, our finest city burned. It burned with fires lit by cruelty and neglect. It burned with shame for giving the title of emperor to a man who did not deserve it. An emperor cannot allow himself to become buried in the shadowed vaults of self-doubt. Cannot allow thoughts of imagined disaster to spin about inside his mind like so many strife-splintered wheels. An emperor navigates his way through the terrors of perplexity with his eyes set firmly on the rising sun. A leader cannot simply stride forward into the future and expect his people to be able to follow. A leader must look over his shoulder so that he can witness and understand the consequences of the path he has chosen, to ensure that his people are still with him, to ensure that he has not become lost. The just goddess presides over us all. The future of the Empire rests in her even hands. In the impressionable youth of my reign, I was encouraged to believe in the precious nature of my imperial blood. The divine clarity is one full of according to repeat with tiresome regularity. Unfortunately, my divine claret refused to pour from one cup to another. Try as I might, with a lovely procession of young and ever-dutiful wives, my noble seed simply would not sprout. Who then to choose as my worthy successor, with the candidates on hand either mediocre at best or maniacal at worst? I found myself in quite the quandary. That's when fortune took me by the hand and led me to a forgotten tome on a forgotten shelf in the quietest corner of San Library. A tome entitled Ancient Traditions of Asmerian Ascendancy. The rest, one might say, is history. Oh.
The son of Esamir met the son of San upon the road to the imperial throne. The Eternal offered his cunning, his eyes and ears bought and paid for. The Esamite offered his strength, his sword, earned in the arena. A pact was forged, with the labyrinth as witness. Two men separated by blood, two men bound by hope, two men, and only one emperor. The warrior bled upon Zaro's stones and cursed Zaro's ilk. He looked upon the walls of his tomb, built by his masters, his enemies, and called for the first ones to carry him to the forest and fields of his Esamir. Yet while the first ones remained silent, the guide did speak. Of secrets planted by clever hands, enslaved by gold. And with one such secret, plucked the life of the warrior from the first one's jaws. The guide led the warrior down a path that wound and twisted through fields of blossoming promises, green-bladed hopes. The warrior closed his eyes, a mere moment to feel the warmth of the sun on his back, and to drink from the guide's prophet flask. Now the warrior staggers and crawls down the wounded, tortured causeway. The bitterness stings his weeping eyes, the fire roars in his belly, consuming him. The warrior will not ascend. Instead he hunts, guided by his love for Esamir.
The Asmeri were consummate survivors. They had to be, having been sired in the most inhospitable range of mountains in all of Rayclast. Unfortunate, some might say. I do not. I believe it was the making of them, and of us, their descendants. So it is no wonder that they developed the Lord's trial. With survival being a moment-by-moment concern, that harried people grew to understand power quite intimately. Strong leadership is able to bridge the chasm between existence and extinction. Poor leadership might see an entire tribe vanish into that same chasm. When the Asmeri descended from their mountains to conquer the fecund lands of central Rayclast, they thrived and multiplied with utmost alacrity in those more forgiving climes. For is it not poverty that teaches us how we might excel in times of plenty? The Asmeri were the first culture known in history to use trials of strength, wisdom, and spirit to select its chieftains. The first Lord's trial was a rough-hewn maze festooned with wild animals and brutal traps, crafted to test aspiring Asmerian leaders' body, mind, and soul. In conquering the adversities of the maze, a champion proved they were capable of bearing the crushing burden of chieftainship. The first trials were simple contraptions reflecting simple times. As the Asmarian civilization grew in number and complexity, so did the trials, from treacherous mazes to bewildering labyrinths. Alas, there are no surviving descriptions of the labyrinth that tested and proved the worth of Veruso Prima Imperialis. I imagine it was quite something to behold. The custom of the Lord's trial was upheld throughout the founding years of the Empire. Veruso's successor, Caspiro, was a low-born legionnaire, the lone survivor of a labyrinth that claimed the lives of every high-born contender, including Veruso's only son. Caspiro proved to be every bit the emperor that Veruso was. Alas, the Lord's labyrinth was corrupted by those with the vanity to consider their blood more precious than their empire. Selfish blood breeds selfish times, and the Empire paid for it with its own blood, with the Knight of 1,000 Ribbons, with that most regal of cannibals, Emperor Romira. Not anymore. I, Izaro Frecius, shall return us to justice. I shall build the greatest Lord's labyrinth in Asmarian history, and my successor shall be chosen by the goddess herself. Only when the Lord's labyrinth is drenched in selfish blood can a true leader ascend the throne.
Despite everything else you've done, to let piety live is to threaten the existence of every living thing on this continent. Look to the west of Gravisius's camp. You'll find piety in the Lunaris temple, cowering behind her desecrations.
Piety's off to meet the Maker, is she? I'd love to be a fly on the wall of that little chat.
You have claimed the most worthy of prey, Makoru. Piety, the mistress of corruption. I'm not saying the war is over, but you've given Rayclast a much-needed respite. Because of you, this land lives to see another dawn. And don't forget that you've done Grigor and Clarissa a justice of some magnitude. They will wish to speak to you. Go.
Wherever he is, I'm sure Tolman knows what you've done. I know you didn't do it for him, or for me. It doesn't matter. Piety's reign of cruelty is over. Thank you. See you.
Piety dies amongst her abominations, her warped dream taunting her, maddeningly out of reach. As a poet, I'm fond of that creed of justice. Here, the executioner needs recompense. Unfortunately, Piety was simply a puppet of a greater force. You've cut the strings, but the master remains. Dominus. That key you've picked up, I heard the blackguards talk of it. It's the one key to the Scepter of God on the northern edge of the blackguard encampment. Only Piety was permitted to carry it. Dominus accessed his laboratory at the summit of the tower via a pulley system rigged to the outside wall. That way will be barred to you, and I heard of no one, not even Piety, going in or coming out of the lower levels. Go with care, Exile. I can't imagine what's inside that tower if even Piety and Dominus feared to tread its steps.
To kill a man like Dominus, that's an accomplishment worthy of Kaum, my greatest ancestor. Were we in Namakanui, I'd make you a Makanga, an honored warrior. But we are not in Namakanui. We dwell in a city of death, and my respect is all the honor I can bestow on you. You have claimed the most worthy of prey, Makoru. Piety and Dominus, the harbingers of nightmare. I'm not saying the war is over, but you've given Rayclast a much-needed respite. Because of you, this land lives to see another dawn.
You
have mounted the summit of the Empire, not a cockroach. You have crushed the bug Emperor and wiped his maggot dreams from the skin of Rayclaw. Dominus exiled you, naked and alone, unto the palm of death. But you would not die, would you? No. No. You cuddled death, promised it the world, made it your loving pet, and so generously shared it with all your fleeting friends here in Rayclaw. Not once did you forget what you were. Not a cockroach feeding on the corpse of a dead empire, like the pests you crushed as you walked. A woman. The sort of woman that planted the seed of this empire right here in Sound so long ago. What teetering and twisted life it still holds dear, this land owes to you, Ranger. Of course, there will be more. You know that, don't you? Emperors. Avaricious little pests scrabbling to steal the legacy of their betters. Unless we burn that legacy, sear its infection from the flesh of existence. Go north, my lovely unbug. Go to Highgate, to the beginning of the end. Dive headlong into the nightmare sea. Catch and roast yourself a nice big